Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Figdor. I am the Robert L. Fox Endowed Chair for Science. I'm also the curator for the Upper Iowa Herbarium, the dried plant samples, basically. Okay? And it's a great pleasure to have you all here today. It's a great pleasure to be able to introduce, if you will, this particular exhibit 5 miles from Fayette. Now, I'm a scientist, so talking about art makes me a little uncomfortable. Okay, so I'm actually a little nervous. But anyways, here we go. Again, this whole show really represents a kind of a confluence of things that just kind of came together in a very quick way over the past few months. I had, some work was done before that. Basically, the herbarium has some samples in from one of our founding fathers from Upper Iowa, Dr. Charles Coleman Parker, C.C. Parker. Okay. And these samples have survived, some of them on the wall over here, have survived for 140, 150 years, okay. Collected from 5 miles from around Fayette. Okay. And these samples over that period of time have inspired all of the people that were involved with this project. It's just amazing how magical, and scientists don't like using words about magic, but this is just truly magical what has transpired with this project, as far as I'm concerned. It's just amazing how that legacy from 140, 150 years ago has come across, and here we are, and boy, don't I hope that another 140, 150 years from now, somebody's going to be standing up here talking about me. Maybe. Hopefully they're still talking about Dr. Parker, to tell you the truth. But anyways, again, some of the key players here, the family members, we do have family members here from Dr. Parker's family, and they're ones that they knew about this collection that Dr. Parker made about 150 years ago. It was really a hobby for him, and somewhat a hobby, somewhat of a teaching tool. Again, Dr. Parker was actually the first physician here that resided here in Fayette. Okay. He was a surgeon in the Civil War, okay. So he wore all these different types of hats. He taught a little bit here. He actually was a longtime member of the Board of Trustees here, and I noticed we have several Board of Trustees members here, so we appreciate them for coming. Okay. So he had all these hats, but one of the things he liked to do was go out, as he was riding around, out and about, he'd seed plants and he'd kind of collect the plants, and actually there's a Collegian article that kind of mentions how he would bring them back. He'd bring these dried plants back, dry them out, press them so you could see them, and they kind of became his friends or his acquaintances. And the strange thing about it is, ever since I've been working with this collection, they become my friends and acquaintances too. Seriously. Love it. Okay. Some of these plant samples were collected from, again, a time when there was large expanses of native prairie, and that was just being gobbled up quite a bit at that particular point in time. The land was being converted into agricultural land, so some of the things that you see on the wall over here and some of the other things, you just don't see them out in the wild, well, at least around here anymore. Okay. So that's something important that we need to know. So we're actually trying to get out and do some of our own collecting. I have students helping with collecting around about here to see, can we find some of the same things. Of course, we found a lot of the same things, but we haven't found all of them. But again, as the family really started getting me to find and pull these samples back together again, I presented a little bit on that, and all of a sudden, Alyssa Wenthy, one of our professors of art here, picked up on it, took it back to Laura Gleiser, one of our other professors in art here, and they got excited about it, and I think then it went to the next step to the visiting artist that actually put together the display that's going to talk here, Lee Emma Running. Lee, I only have met her maybe about 3 times, but she catapulted to be one of my BFFs almost immediately. She's got so much drive, enthusiasm. It's just incredible. And the ability to be able to tie together things you wouldn't think you'd normally tie together. Science, botany, art, history. Okay, so many things come together with this collection. So many interdisciplinary things. And again, all I can say is, boy, I've been teaching here for 27 years. That's what it's all about here at Upper Iowa. That's really what it's all about. Okay. We're still going to be doing a little bit more work with the collection. We know about it here. We got to take the, what did they used to call it, the basket, the peach basket off of the light and let the light shine. So again, we're going to have to be doing some more work with this. I've described to the Parker family some of the work that needs to be done to make this kind of a truly archival. Again, Dr. Parker started this as a collection for, like I said, a hobby, but also kind of a teaching collection, but to make it something that the scientists that study the flora of that particular era, when these were collected, again, they need to, we need to make sure that we can document that they were truly collected at this particular time in this particular place. So we're still working on some of that. Some of the samples, again, the way they were labeled, nothing against Dr. Parker, the way they were labeled, some of the samples have outdated names for them. I'm just going to show you one, if I could. Again, this is a wood lily. And again, the label here, Lilium Catsbyi, is not really the correct name for this, okay, and that's okay. It's even the books that talk about this particular lily, that's a wood lily, Philadelphicum, even the books that talk about this say that these two look very similar, only the one that he has listed here is usually found more in the south, not up here, okay. Such subtle differences, but we got to make sure that we get it right if we're going to share it with the scientific community. So again, this is what we're going to do, and I'm showing this one mainly because, again, if you saw the little, this is the sample that inspired, and I've got to say it's truly an inspiration because I can see things. I'm so excited. I can see things on here that I can't really see here very well. See, there's 6 stamens here. It's a monocot. Okay, sorry. Maybe it's an inside joke, but again, it's just thrilling, and the colors and things, and so just so much has been done, and I'm learning so much just from working with Lee and Laura and Alyssa and others. Okay. We do have some of the Parker family members here, so again, I want to make sure that they get introduced and recognized. Okay. Again, we have Julie Gable and Ellen Dougherty. Dougherty. Thank you. And these are actually daughters of Thomas and Helen Parker Gable. Okay? And that name is important to me because, again, some of the scholarships that I give out every year for science, again, come from are the Thomas and Helen Parker Gable scholarships, which is really great. Okay? We have Patty Parker and Scott Parker. Yes. And again, they are from another line of the Parker family. I've got the whole Parker family, part of the Parker family tree here, so if you'd like to see that, it'd be great. But again, we're just so thankful that you were able to come and be here with us, and we're so thankful to what you and your other family members have done with helping us out with this particular collection. Okay. Yes, we want to. And again, we've had an awful lot of help as well from the administration, particularly Andrew Wenthe and President Duffy. Bill and Sharon Duffy have just been really good champions for the things that we've been trying to do with this. Okay, so I'm going to stop now because I can talk forever, and I'm going to now introduce Laura.
Well, thank you, Dr. Figdor, and thank you all for coming out today. I wish the sun was coming in so you all could see how it casts shadows on the white pillars in here, but on a sunny day you'll all have to come back and check it out. I'm Assistant Professor of Art Laura Gleisner, also the gallery director here, and I want to introduce our visiting artist Lee Emma Running. Lee is Associate Professor of Art at Grinnell College and resides in Des Moines. She's traveled all over the U.S., done a ton of different artist residencies, namely one in the Penland School of Craft, and then also Bemis Artist Residency that is located in Omaha, Nebraska. Lee was invited this summer to view the herbarium by Associate Professor Alyssa Wenthe, and she came up and, like Dr. Parker said, not Dr. Scott Figdor said, she was just inspired by all the different veins and the colors and the lights that she could get out of these 140-year-old plants. So if you would all help me welcome Lee Emma Running.
Hello. This is really amazing. I can't quite believe that it exists. I'm amazed at the speed and the support that has gone into making this possible. I teach at a small liberal arts college, and I really want to echo what Scott was saying about the importance of these cross-disciplinary moments, right? These places where disciplines come together and inform each other and help us make sense of the world, which I think is some of the big project of education. It's one of the big things we're trying to do is what is it? What is this place? I moved to Iowa in 2001. I grew up in Colorado, where I know the Parker family also has a lot of connections. But I grew up in Denver, but I spent a lot of my childhood in the Rocky Mountains, walking and collecting things. My mom said she always knew when I had jeans in the wash because there were rocks in the dryer. So I was that kid that always gathered things. And I did my undergraduate in New York City, and when I moved to Iowa, I couldn't really figure out what to look at. It was sort of a difficult place for me to understand what there was to see here. And then I met some people who were working in prairie restoration, and I started figuring out that what's happening in the 8 feet of growing space in the canopy of the prairie is equal to a rainforest, is equal to the ocean. There's this world of wonderment that's happening inside the prairie, and it's just happening at a smaller scale. It's just happening at a little bit of a tinier space. And so when Alyssa called me this spring and said, do you want to come and look at this herbarium that we have? We have this remarkable collection. I thought, oh, another collector. Like, I want to come and see this. I want to come and see what these samples are from 140 years ago, and what a privilege to be able to have such a beautiful and incredibly well-organized collection. I understand pressed flowers. I have boxes in my own studio that are labeled, flower petals from last spring and root samples, and all these little things that I find and collect. And so to come and be able to take a look, but also to have the privilege of a science lab at my disposal for where to look at them. And one of my impulses as a maker, when I'm trying to figure out what I'm seeing, is to blow it up so that you can see it better, to make it larger. And scientists do this all the time by putting them inside a microscope and putting a sample on a petri dish and being able to see what's happening inside of it. But for me, I just put them on an overhead projector because there happened to be one in the lab. And this was sort of this amazing discovery that suddenly backlighting these samples and projecting them up on the wall, I was able to see all of these details that were inside these plants that were beautiful to the naked eye and beautiful under my iPhone camera, but when they were blown up to 300, 400% and zoomed in, you can see the color. And to look at DNA from 140 years ago and look at colorants that are inside these plants from so long ago, and many of the ones that are on the windows now are spring ephemerals. Plants that go through their entire life cycle on the forest floor before the canopy opens in the spring. So the earth is warm, the leaves haven't come out on the trees yet, and these tiny, tiny plants, these Dutchman's britches and these shooting stars, these very small little plants will emerge and go through a whole cycle in just a few weeks. And this ability to capture this ephemerality seems so beautiful to me. Like, what a beautiful project to capture something that's momentary for a long time, for 140 years. And so the generosity of the Parker family being able to help me make a project like this that really honors that sense of the momentary, because this project is really all about light. And I know we're here on this overcast day, but each one of these images on the glass is made from a direct drawing of the projections that I made up here in July in the science lab. So I was able to come up and be in residence for 3 days. I spent, and maybe it was only even 2. I was up all night. It was so exciting. I felt like Jacques Cousteau. It was like I was I was underwater, just pulling these samples and putting them up on the glass. You can see how excited I am in the video. I just kept putting them on the overhead and looking at what would appear. It was just everything was new. So I came back to the studio with these images and traced them so that I could understand them better. And the complexity of these blooms and seeds of the prairie smoke were just phenomenal, and I wanted them to be the center. I wanted this piece to open and be bilaterally symmetrical. So much in nature has bilateral symmetry to it. Our bodies are bilaterally symmetrical. Plants are bilaterally symmetrical. We follow that same model. But I also love that it feels like it opens like a book. There's a spine in the center of the installation that it opens from. Each of the mirrors pass through the doors, so the Dutchmen are mirrored. They're also on both sides of the glass. These are the 2 pieces of glass in the space that have interior windows on both sides. And those stems were some of the few flowers that were stacked in the specimens that I was looking at. So I wanted to be able to see the light through the glass as I was seeing the light through the pieces of the flowers as they were stacked on the projector. But this idea of making these tracings by hand and then cutting them out of this transparent adhesive vinyl, each of the pieces on the glass has between 4 and 8 layers of vinyl stacked on top of each other. And the colors that happen there are surprising too. The smokes that I'm looking at now, the prairie smokes, are yellow beneath and gray, but that bright red, that sort of rubine red, is actually a layer of violet put on top. And that orange is a really pale and beautiful pink. And then there's a second layer of violet on the stem. And so this ability to stack up these pieces of transparency in order to make colored light to come into the space. In the evening when the sun shines through, it's like a cathedral. It feels like stained glass windows that we can stand beneath. And I love the idea that as people pass through these halls and walk through the space, they'll carry these images on their bodies. They'll carry the projections on their skin, and it will change the quality of light in the space. So I'm incredibly grateful to the Parker family for supporting this project. I'm incredibly grateful to C.C. Parker for collecting these specimens. It's such a treasure. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And to Scott for giving me access to his lab, and to Laura for designing the gallery, and to Alyssa for thinking about this whole thing to begin with. I had 2 amazing students, Abby and Carly Lowe, who helped me come and install. Carly deftly drove the skyjack back and forth so that we could get up to the really tall windows. So I'm incredibly grateful, and this has been such a beautiful labor of love to make this piece. I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Aside from all the work that Lee did out on the windows, we also had a lot of people behind the scenes. The UIU archivist, Jeanette Garcia, right here, she put in a lot of work. We had everyone from writing press releases and articles. Jackson Hayek over here made the video on the wall. We also have a student who I sent out into the prairie to shoot videos for me. He didn't know what he was doing until he came back to edit them. Zach Lefebvre, his piece is on the back wall. He's actually getting his appendix out right now. So fingers crossed for that he couldn't be here and that everything goes smoothly. But we just want to thank you everyone. Thanks everyone for coming. Please enjoy all the food that we have over here. Check out all the samples, the history of the Parker family, and have a great homecoming weekend.